This path that I'm walking on was the main road in 1314. It's the main medieval road into Stirling. And knights came down here in the month of June 1314. And the reason they came down this way is that lies before you is the Bannockburn. This is called Milton Ford. Now this is the only crossing point within a mile, because the embankments are extremely steep and heavily wooded, useless for heavy cavalry or even light horse, treacherous even. Now the ford here can be quite formidable in wet weather. It was raining last night, it was raining this morning, so the Bannockburn is a little bit heavy at this point. But what you see right in front of you here, this was the start of the fighting on day one of the Battle of Bannockburn. This ford here, the English came down. Now it's Scotland's bottleneck when you look at the narrowness of this road up here, and you look at how these embankments have been worn away over the centuries with millions of people crossing them. You can just see the ground rise right up there to the left, and so the Bannockburn is quite formidable here. One knight who was out in front that day was called Henry de Bohun. He was with Gloucester's division. He crossed this water. Their main objective was to relieve Stirling Castle, but also to engage the Scots. Now when he crossed this water, just looking upstream there from the Bannockburn, even quite formidable if you were to try and cross that, even on foot at the moment. That would not be an easy crossing, the stones are smooth. But on this piece of high ground here, what you have, it was heavily wooded then, you had the Scottish Schiltrams, Bruce's pike division. Now de Bohun crosses here with other knights. He sees Bruce. He sees Bruce's colours and he races up here, but he suddenly finds himself in a world of trouble because he is met roughly by the Scots. He turns and he flees to warn the rest of his people. Bruce sees him on his horse. Bruce catches up with him. And right about here where I'm standing now, just before he's able to cross the ford again, Bruce brings his battle axe down through his helmet and cleaves his head in two. The first blood to the Scots. The English are not long in piling up here, but look at it, it's very narrow. It's a bottleneck here. So what happens? They are only able to cross probably a maximum of 4 at a time. Probably in 2s and 3s. They come across this ford. They charge up the steep embankment and they're met roughly by the Scots. They're repelled. Gloucester himself is unhorsed. And the English, coming up for some sport, have suddenly realised that the Scots are there and that they are going to stand and fight. It's not a good start for them. Now some of the younger knights who are more impetuous and impatient make their way along the top of the high ground right in front of us there. You can see there's no way they can get down and across the Bannockburn when it's like this. So they go for a good mile downstream until they come between Halberts and Milton Bog, which was defended by Edward Bruce, Robert's brother. They are also repelled there in what's known as the Bloody Fold, the Bloody Field. You can see how strong the Bannockburn is here. So they come back this way and they make their way down to the Carse, which is the appointed camp for the English, the Carse of Balquidderock. But Milton Ford, this was the main medieval road in 1314. It was the only crossing point within a mile in the Scots Sheldrums, where that high piece of ground is and where those houses are now. That's where they were arrayed in the woods here, lying in wait for the English. Edward Bruce's division further down between Milton and Halbert's Bogs. The Earl of Moray, Randolph's division, he was protecting St Ninians, for this road after the curve on the high ground here goes directly to St Ninians. It was the main road even in 1242 when they built the St Ninians churchyard. But this is such a significant place. And if you look at the English sources, if you comb your way through them and analyse them and compare them together, there is no doubt that this is where the skirmish took place on day one. It's been a hell of a 2 days for Gloucester. He's unhorsed somewhere just over there in his attempt to penetrate the Scots pikes unsuccessfully. So the knights turn back. They turn back. After the bloody encounter, they cross this ford. Some have gone up the high ground that way, and they've returned unsuccessfully, and they've headed up towards what is called the Cat's Craig, and they will make their way down to the camp in the Carse. But this was the first part of the fighting. On day one, there was no bridge built here until the 1500s. So in 1314, this is the only crossing point. And it's a very dodgy crossing point. You have to take great care in crossing here. Whether you're on cart, horse or foot, it does not matter. But this piece of ground that I'm standing on now is where one man whose charge for glory ended in his own quick death at the hands of the King of Scots, Robert the Bruce himself. It was a great morale booster for the Scots. It couldn't have gone any better for them. It was planned. The English did not get access to the dry field this way. They did not get access to the dry field on day one or day two. That's why the battle was fought in the Carse. At all costs, Bruce had to defend the dry field. And he did. Edward Bruce defended it in the middle. Moray defended it on the far right towards St Ninians. And Douglas's division was in the centre of the dry field in readiness to help any of the divisions that needed this help. None of them did that day. They all coped very well on their own. We will look at the skirmish between Halbert and Milton's Bog in due course, and we will look at the skirmish with Randolph's men against Clifford and Beaumont. But this is, Bruce saw the action first, and he saw it right here. The English came right down that road. They crossed here. They engaged on the high ground up there. On that day in June, 1314.